All right, Gary, welcome back. Round two. Here we go. I'm very excited. I wanted to quote you from our first episode that we did a couple months ago. At the very end, you finished off and said, I feel fulfilled. My life is an exciting adventure. There's not much distinction between work and play for me. So I wanted to ask, how can people find the thing that makes them tick and the thing that fulfills them?
Yeah, that's a big question. It's going to take hours to unpack, Elon. But first of all, thanks for having me back on your show. I really enjoyed talking to you last time. I felt like we connected on a good level, on a resonant level. So I'm happy to be invited back. But like you're asking this question from it's an important question you're asking, Elon. But like I don't know how to answer it without going a little bit around the corner for a moment, let's say. And that is to say that people don't realize that learning and work are supposed to be fun. So I'm just behaving in a way that is organic, is natural. And so most people experience learning and work as a necessary evil, as something to be avoided, as drudgery. And that's really the sad thing, and I could talk about like why that is and how that is. But I also don't want people to hear that and think that, oh, you got to find your life's purpose. Because that only happens by being in the arena and experimenting and trying lots of things. Like you're not going to find your life's purpose by like staring at your navel or, taking psychedelics, right? But so let me get to a more concrete answer to your question. I think we talked about this last time, but like you have things you're interested in, right? And you didn't get to pick them. They came on the hard drive. And your job is to figure out how to use those, I'm going to call them gifts, to make yourself useful to other humans. Like, what do you like to do? That's question one. And how can you make yourself useful to other humans with what you like to do? And if you can find a way to put those things together, like you're going to flourish. Now, I want to put one more asterisk in that answer. I talk about this in my book. After I failed in my first business, which was a sandwich shop, I started over with no money, no education, a borrowed letter. I was in debt, no college degree, cleaning gutters, knocking on doors in a wealthy neighborhood, offering to clean gutters. I'm afraid of heights, Elon. I don't love gutter cleaning. But just the act of solving problems for other people with my own effort, with my own, I don't even want to say inventiveness, because there's nothing really inventive about it. I guess you could call it that. But like just solving problems, like using my faculties to solve problems for other people, is in itself engaging. Does that make sense to you?
100%. Yeah. And I was even going to say to add on to that, I feel like the whole idea of everybody has something that they enjoy doing, that they like doing, they don't realize that maybe their 2 or 3 years of art that they've had a blast doing could help somebody starting out new. Like, oh, here's something that you might make as a beginner that I did, that I can help stop it, if that makes sense. Or like you have these experiences that will help people, I guess, lower than you, or who have less of a time commitment in that thing, like achieve and progress faster than you could have.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just like, think about what happens to you when you solve a puzzle, right? You get this little squirt of dopamine in your brain. It's like you go, aha, right? When you solve something you're trying to solve for, that's nature telling you keep going. It's rewarding you. It's giving you a good feeling from solving a problem. Like curiosity, like what's going on in the world around me, like exploration. Those are all inherently, like we're all inherently wired to be that way, and we learn not to. And that's a big part of my thesis is that non-entrepreneurial behavior is learned, that we're indoctrinated into managerial systems that assume that we're going to work in an established company where the useful thing has been figured out by somebody smarter than you. And we don't even want you to have useful thing discovery skills because they get in the way. We want you to be productive. And like you got to be productive, but you can't just be hyper productive. You got to carve out some time and space in your life to be creative. And productivity is at odds with creativity.
I love that. And for anybody listening to this who didn't listen to the first episode, when we talked earlier, Gary and I, he mentioned that there's two different mindsets, paradigms, etc. So he said there's the managerial paradigm and the entrepreneurial paradigm. And he mentioned that and correct me if I'm wrong, Gary, but he said that the entrepreneurial paradigm is all about making mistakes and the managerial is all about preventing mistakes.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. But the problem is we don't realize that we're immersed in a managerial paradigm. We're so inured to it, we don't even realize. It's like this David Foster Wallace thing, right? There's the two old fish swimming along. The two young fish swimming along. And they pass the older fish. And the older fish says, "Good morning, fellas. How's the water?" And the two younger fish just keep swimming along until one of them looks at the other one and goes, "What the hell is water?" Right? We're so steeped in this managerial way of thinking, which is other directed. Someone else is telling you what to learn, what to do in exchange for a letter grade or a paycheck. And that's fine, but what's neglected is the discovery part of it. We've neglected the opportunity discovery skills, which inherently, back to your first question, make life more interesting. And so part of what I'm saying in my new book, The Entrepreneurial Mindset Advantage, is that we're living in the most opportunity-rich time in human histories happening right now. But you can't see these opportunities with a managerial mindset. They're invisible. But again, going back to your first question, Ilan, like if you can get somebody to understand like life is one big treasure hunt, like walk outside your door, there's an opportunity. But you have to go looking for it. You got to kind of know how to look for it. It requires experimentation and adaptation. It doesn't require business planning. It requires lots of little failures, to your earlier point.
Yeah, and even something you said last episode, which was just, I love this so much. I wrote it down, is people think that they need to know to go, but they need to go in order to know.
That's it. That's it. And the managerial paradigm teaches you to know, KNOW, before you go. And that's prudent in some situations where you're taking big risks, where the data is known. You know, that's prudent. It's not wrong necessarily. But for opportunity discovery, that doesn't work. You have to go in order to know. So for my, in my own life, like gutter cleaning led to home repairs, which led to this understanding that in these wealthier neighborhoods, there are code violations when you go to sell your house. The city comes in and inspects your house, and gives you a whole list of code violations you have to remedy before you can sell your house. And so real estate agents started calling me. Like I was the get shit done guy. Like I could fix I'm handy. I know how to fix things. I don't understand electricity, but I found an electrician that does. I built a little network of people, and I built this like empire on small home repairs that no one else wants to do. I had to be out knocking on doors, cleaning gutters to find it.
Yeah, and I would even argue that it's impossible to know everything and be 100% prepared before you go into something, because especially if you don't know what you're getting yourself into, it's impossible to know what you don't know, right? So by definition, you have to go first, take those steps, clean the gutters in order to find out, oh, wait a second, maybe I got to do it this way, or there's a code violation that I have to, get rid of first that people saw in their homes. Like very nuanced stuff comes up only after a lot of experience, because you have to know how to do the thing first before you can essentially break the rules of it, right? Like I was even telling this to somebody because I heard it on a podcast, but exactly what I just said. You can't break the rules unless you know the rules to begin with. So you have to play the game for a certain amount of time until you realize maybe I can do it this way, right? Maybe I can tweak it a little bit. So instead of having to clean the gutters this way, I can clean it this way, and it's going to be along with the code. It's going to get me the best reviews and get me paid the most amount of money.
Well, but also what I'm saying, Ilan, is that like I thought gutter cleaning was going to be the thing, and it wasn't. I probably cleaned 5 gutters. But I cleaned the gutters well. I showed up early. I over-delivered, and that's why people started asking me to solve adjacent problems, which led to the adjacent opportunity that was much bigger than gutter cleaning. And I don't want that point to get overlooked. Like the first rule of entrepreneurship is show up 15 minutes early and stay 15 minutes late. Do a little bit more than a reasonable person would expect. An opportunity will find you. It's not that complicated.
Yes,
But
you were in the arena.
exactly. But there's a nuance I also want to touch on that you mentioned a second ago. Like you step into the arena and you try things and you don't really know what you're doing, but you're not making big, bold bets. By stepping into the arena, I don't mean you're betting everything, you're quitting your job, you're going all in. You're making lots of little $5 bets. You're trying things on a small scale to see what works. And that's the beauty of not having access to money. Money makes you stupid. When it comes to opportunity discovery, money makes you stupid. Right? It's so easy to convince yourself that you've got the right idea. All you just need is the money, and people are going to just flock to your door to buy your thing. Like, that's delusional. So the lack of money actually works to your advantage. It forces you to try lots of things on a small scale. Now, if you look to nature, that's how an organism orients itself in unfamiliar terrain. By trying lots of little things on a small scale, you drastically increase the probability that an opportunity will be found before you perish. It's biology.
Sure, and even to your point, it's important to have to try out a bunch of stuff that have very little risk involved, as opposed to just doing one big bet at a time and
Yeah.
seeing it fail and then fail. And then you get super discouraged because you put so much into that one thing and you thought it was going to work and you tried to force it, but you can't force success. It's just got to come over those small bets.
Yeah. I get frustrated when people talk about fail often, like failure. You hear the word entrepreneur, and like you can just look at your watch and count to 10 before somebody mentions the word failure. Well, the failure rate of entrepreneurship is so damn high because of the way it's being taught. It's being taught as gambling. It's being taught as if your startup is the same as a large corporation. You're being taught, like, okay, write a business plan, right? Go find money. Like, what's being taught is like gambling. So I wrote this in my book. Like, the business plan becomes this mastercraft in fooling yourself. How am I going to write a business plan for, like, cleaning gutters? But because someone is telling me if I write a business plan, I can go get $50,000, I'm going to make up some bullshit. I'm going to go, okay, here's the demographic, people in this income, such percentage of people in that income, and here's the market size. I'm going to make up some shit, right? And all I'm doing is convincing myself that gutter cleaning is the way to go. There's no real mechanism in that for critical thinking. And then let's say that some fool gives me $50,000. Now I go buy a fancy truck with a bunch of fancy ladders. It says Gary's Gutter Cleaning on my shirt. I got a yard sign that says Gary's Gutter Cleaning that says it on my invoice on my truck. The lady's not going to ask me to fix her garage door. Right? It's just, and, honestly, I don't love gutter cleaning. I'm afraid of heights. It's like not something I'm even, good at.
Sure, and you bought the equipment, you did all that stuff.
I'm committed.
Before you even knew if it was going to work or not.
It's in medicine. It's called premature diagnostic closure. Right? And I just walled myself off from a greater opportunity. So,
I totally agree.
But I want to come back to what we were riffing on originally here, Elon, which is that people equate entrepreneurship with failure. And the first thing I want to say is, like, the failure rate of small businesses, whatever number you believe, is way too high, largely because it's being taught as gambling. It's not being taught as opportunity discovery and micro-experimentation, as I describe it in my new book, which I'll stop pointing to in a second.
Do whatever.
Because what people really need to understand, it's micro failure. It's like, try something really small. Go talk to somebody you never talked to before. Knock on some doors. Just like spend 4 hours on a Saturday talking to people. Find out what's in your attic. Try to turn $50 into $500 in your spare time. And learn from those failures. Right? So you can't just say the word failure without quantifying it, is all I'm saying.
Yes, I totally agree. And I actually have a really good example for you. So I used to work at a gym. I mean, I'm part-time, but I'm in school right now, so I'm not really working there. But I used to work at a gym, and I would give tours to people, right? And, when you're working longer shifts, whatnot, it's kind of like, okay, here we go, another tour. Like, it's going to take a while. Like, I don't want to do it. But it was this guy my age. And this is just for your point of you never know where something's going to lead to. So it was this guy my age, gave him a tour, and, everything was going good. We were just talking. And then at the very end of the tour, he's like, I'm really looking, like, to box. And it was, like, a really random statement from him. But he said that. He's like, he saw we had bags. And I train MMA, right? So I told him, I'm like, hey, I would love to, like, train you. If that's ever something you want to do, just text me, here's my number, whatever. And long story short, we had 5 boxing lessons. I got paid for it, and all because I took a tour from this guy. If it was somebody else, if I relied on somebody else to do the thing for me, and they told him, hey, I'm looking for boxing lessons, right? Nothing would have happened from it because we don't really have boxing instructors or anything. But I took it upon myself to do it, and I didn't expect anything from it either. I think that's very important as well. You have to do a lot of things without expecting anything in return, but thinking, like, your mindset should be, oh, you know what, maybe something can happen, and in that time it did. But also I want to say that there was the other 100 times when I've talked to people and nothing came out of it, but the 100 times don't matter because the one time when it works out is the thing that makes everything else worth it.
Yeah, that's a great story. But I want to add something underneath that, Elon, that like there are underlying assumptions in your mind that you're not aware of. Like your interest in an MMA and your entrepreneurial intention. Like when the guy said this, like, I'm interested in boxing, like you said, I'll train you. Other people might have just missed that and kept on going and never saw that as like a potential opportunity. There's that part of it. But, you know, I some years ago, I remember, this is back in this is like 25 years ago. When early on in my journey, I was like not really comfortable doing public speaking. And so I went to like a men's homeless shelter in Cleveland to talk to homeless guys as a way to practice public speaking at like low failure bar, right? I'm not going to get laughed out of the room. And this dude came up to me. He just got out of prison. He spent like 15 years in prison for drug stuff. And, you know, he's now like 40 years old. He's living with this like aged father. You know, I don't know if he had a high school diploma. And he asked me to mentor him. I was like, sure, I'll try to help you however I can. And what I told him was like, knock on 100 doors. Like just set that like expectation. It's going to take 100 doors. So you don't get discouraged when like the 5th door you knock on, you don't have a job yet. Right? It's a brain hack. So then Todd gets this, his name was Todd Daniel, and he gets a job at a call center. It's a minimum wage job. And I told him my second rule of entrepreneurship, show up early, stay late. Opportunity will find you. It's a call center. It's minimum wage, unsatisfying work. Here's what he told me, Lon. He goes, I'm showing up at 7 a.m. every morning. I'm getting paid for one shift, but I'm working 2 shifts because I got nowhere else to go but the streets and get in trouble. 2 years later, they were sending him to South Africa and the Philippines to open call centers. It's not that complicated. But I think to the point that we opened with, it's like people don't understand, like, you're not here in this life to collect a paycheck and buy shit. You're here to use your gifts to contribute. And when you do that, you will flourish. And once you experience it on a small scale, gutter cleaning, boxing, whatever, your brain starts to shift. Your mindset starts to change. Like, how else can I make myself useful? And once you start thinking about that in the margins in your mind over time, you develop an extraordinary advantage over someone of equal or greater potential that just goes to their job and assumes someone else is going to tell me what to learn and do. And I'm going to go home and doom scroll and hang out with my buds and whatever. That's the entrepreneurial mindset advantage right there. It's super subtle, but super powerful.
How can people, I don't know if you consider this a skill or not, but how can people learn the skill of being able to be open to opportunities? How can people actually see it?
Good question. So I think the first step is just recognizing that opportunities are problems in disguise. Right?
How so?
Well, my definition of entrepreneurship is that by solving problems for other people, we empower ourselves. So the fundamental shift is away from like, what do I need, towards what do you need? What do other people need? Right? It's a real subtle underlying cognitive shift that starts to expose opportunities, right? But most people are going through life trying to get their own needs met, trying to make money, trying to fill the void in their soul because their job sucks, you know, They're just trying to get their own needs met. And that's what blinds us to opportunities. Stop me if we talked about this last time, Ilan, but like, here's how our brains work. Inundated, billions of bits of data pouring in through the five senses every second. Our brains can handle a dozen at most. So our brains filter out almost everything. Everything non-essential, everything non-threatening. You just don't even see it. Right? So you're thinking about your own needs. You're not thinking about, what does that guy need? What does that guy need? What's missing here? How can I add value here? You're just not thinking about it, so you don't see it. Number one. Number two is that people can't always express to you what they need. There's not a job board you can go to. There's not a website you can go to where people are posting all their unmet needs. Nobody is saying, hey, I need my gutters cleaned. Hey, I need my gutters cleaned. Right? And this is before social media, so it's even harder. But people don't even know what they want and need. You have to try lots of things to figure it out. That's why the micro-experimenting is like the secret weapon that enables you to unearth opportunities that no one else can see.
Sure. I remember last episode we were talking a little bit. You brushed over this point, so I think now is a good time to go over it. But you said something similar, how we are inundated with, I'm not going to say a culture, but there's a lot of noise around us that stops us from achieving the things that we want, right? Like maybe the person doesn't want to start a business because they feel trapped in their life, right? A 9 to 5, or maybe they feel like they don't have the resources necessary. So how can, we're going to use me as an example, right? How can I prevent all of the noise around me from stopping me from seeing my vision, my dream, which might be starting a business, helping people, and actually finding success in that?
It's a really good question, Ilan, and I would say it like this, like, most people don't even stop and let themselves dream. Like, let's start right there. Like, and I say this to people all the time, like, you know, Henry David Thoreau said, like, go confidently in the direction of your dreams, create the life you imagine. Well, what he forgot to say is you got to take time to imagine the life you want to create.
I love that.
And I mean that. Like, take some quiet time. Get a journal. Like, if you could see no limits, what kind of life do you want to create for yourself? And by writing it down, like physically with a pen and paper, I believe you're able to access a different dimension of intellect than you can when you're typing.
Sure. And there have been people, sorry to interrupt you, but there have been people in worse situations than you that have done better for themselves. And I always think about that because, you know, I'm not somebody who's quick to give myself excuses, but when I do find myself getting a little negative, I think to myself, I'm like, listen, there have been people that have been in much worse spots than me, but they have achieved much greater things.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, like, writing about what's the future, like, let your imagination run free. If you could see no limits, where do you want to be in 5 or 10 years? What kind of life do you want? What kind of partner do you want? What kind of lifestyle do you want? And keep journaling about that, because then you activate your default brain. Will start to, by default brain, I mean like what's happening when you think you're not thinking, your default brain is still at work. Right? That's why you get ideas like when you wake up or you hop out of the shower, it's like, oh shit, there, you know, you got a little piece of the puzzle.
Sure.
But you're training your brain. Most people don't have that compelling vision. They don't have something they're striving for. They don't know it. They just see everybody else around them going to their job. They're going to their job. Maybe they're trying to get a raise or whatever. But like, there's nothing compelling that they're trying to like manifest. So that's the first piece of the puzzle there. Create a compelling goal. Because I think we talked about this last time. Maybe we did. That's the thing that distinguishes the entrepreneurial mind from the non-entrepreneurial mind. Is imagination. Most people are just drawing from memory. We draw from our memory. We do That's how we our mindset becomes a fixed way of thinking where we draw from the memory in order to navigate the future. And what entrepreneurs are doing is they're interrupting that by imagining a future that doesn't yet exist. And so they're using imagination and memory. Really powerful. Really, really powerful. The question I like to ask you, your listeners, do you have a compelling goal? And if
What do you mean by
not,
compelling?
I'll talk about that in a second. But the deeper question is, if not, why not? Like, dude, you better look under the hood. That's a powerful question. Why wouldn't you have a compelling goal? This is why my whole thing is mindset, like these underlying beliefs and assumptions that we're not even aware of that influence our behavior, right? Now, let's get back to your question about what does it mean to be compelling, right? Compelling means technically to be irresistibly pulled, right? It's like, and that gets us to this idea that the goal is acting on you. The goal is pulling out of you behaviors. So let's try to tie these 2 points together. You know, we talk about fail often, fail early, and whatever, take chances, take risks, whatever, right? That doesn't mean jack shit in the absence of a compelling goal. It has no meaning. It's just an abstract idea. The compelling goal gives you a reason to push through your fear. So
I love
somebody,
that.
you see what I'm saying? It's just like you got to consider the context.
Wow, that is amazing. And you did a great job when you said pulling the two together because that makes a lot of sense. And I think a lot of times people, exactly like you mentioned, people will struggle for something that doesn't have an end goal. So it's like if you're struggling to start a business, but you don't know why you're doing business, then you're just struggling for no reason. You're being hard on yourself.
Well, here's an example of how I see this manifest. Let's go back to the gym, okay? I generally swim about 200 miles a year. I run about 600 miles a year. I'm not an Ironman guy, but I stay fit, right? And I see these young guys at the gym, you know, guys in their 30s or whatever. And they're there every day and they're ripped, you know? And I always think to myself, Elon, like, good on you because you figured out how to impact your life somehow. It's a manifestation of some modicum of self-efficacy. You're going to the gym, you're disciplined, you've transformed your body in a way that's made you physically stronger. Kudos to you, man. But my question in my mind, and I don't know the answer to this, is for Christ's sake, I hope for every hour you're spending in the gym, you're spending 2 hours doing the same thing for your mind. Are you reading nonfiction? Right? For every hour in the gym, are you spending another hour or two in an audio book, in an online course, you know, surrounding yourself with other entrepreneurial people? Are you doing the same? I had a conversation with like this guy, in the sauna at the gym talking about this. Like, you know, dude, you're going to get yourself laid. Good for you. You got a six pack, but like, we're not Neanderthals anymore. Like, it's only going to get you so far.
Sure.
Right? Use that discipline and apply it to your mind also.
Sure. And I would even say to your point, I know you're talking about writing things down. That's something that I do a lot. And for people listening to this, I think the value in it is not even writing it down, but just knowing what you want. Because exactly like Gary said, if you know what you want, you can move towards that goal. And then you will see. So Gary in the beginning of this episode was talking a lot about invisible opportunities. And some of you might be thinking, like, what does that even mean? Like that sounds so stupid. But let me explain this to you from how I understand it from my experience. So if I know that I have a podcast about mindset, which I do, then I will see more opportunities when I meet people and they tell me, hey, I'm really good with my mindset. That's something that I'm good with. If you don't have the podcast to begin with and the guy tells you that I spent a lot of time improving my mindset. You know, this is what I do. You think to yourself, that's a pretty cool guy, and then you move on to the next, and it doesn't matter, right? It's not an opportunity because you don't have the podcast. But with me and me having this podcast, if I heard that, the first thing I would think of is, oh, like, would you want to be on my show? Like, I would love to have you. You seem like a smart guy, etc. So that's just something I can think of off the top of my head. I don't know if you can attest to that at all, Gary.
Yeah, it's like, again, we talked about this, Elon, like you got to get in the arena. Like, why aren't you in the arena? Again, it's an underlying mindset thing, right? The range of what we think and do is limited by what we fail to notice. That's a quote from R.D. Laing, a psychiatrist. And what he goes on to say is that there's nothing we can do until we notice how failing to notice shapes our thoughts and deeds. It's a bit of a mind twister, right?
Yes.
But there's all these opportunities. There's opportunity everywhere. But if you're not looking for it, you're not going to find it. You're going to trip over it 5 times a day. That's really it. Again, this is what we talked about before you hit record. Like, the people who are looking for opportunities, find them. And the people who aren't, don't. So the question becomes, are you looking for opportunities? If not, why not? That's a mindset question. What is it about your underlying beliefs and assumptions about you or about the world around us that's caused you to stop looking? That's where the money is.
Sure. Do you think that entrepreneurship is as much like a self-development journey in and of itself as much as it is like an actual running a business and like getting an income from it?
You know, I said as much in my book, Ilan. I said that like I describe entrepreneurship as an opportunity discovery process. And through opportunity discovery, self-discovery occurs. Yeah, let me say that same thing to you in reverse. Let me turn that statement inside out. In the absence of a compelling goal, in the absence of you striving towards something meaningful, and by the way, it can't be meaningful if it isn't creating value for other people. It just won't get to that level of motivation. You just won't get access to it. That's biology. That's not philosophy or religious. It's biological, right? So ask yourself, Ilan, what happens to a human being in the absence of a compelling goal? You just cannot become all that you are meant to become. And as Maslow said, unless you plan on being all that you can become, you should plan on being unhappy all the days of your life. So let me add, let me kind of take this in a slight tangent, and stop me if I already said this in the last episode. But I define entrepreneurship as the self-directed pursuit of opportunities to create value for others. And the more value you create for others, the better off you'll be, not just financially, but holistically, right? So if I can get a person to get that idea, then I can take you to the next step, which is this. Discovering opportunity doesn't require money. It doesn't require inventiveness or big ideas. It doesn't require any special personality traits. It doesn't require any credential. It doesn't require anything like a 5th grader doesn't already have. Right? You should be able to read and write and count, basically. That's it. Right? if I can get you to that next point, to accept that, there's opportunity everywhere. Discovering that opportunity does not require anything you don't already have. Then we get to the next important question, which is, what's preventing you from making yourself more useful to more humans? And again, these are questions I ask to get people to think about their own thinking. Because they'll say, oh, I guess I thought I needed a degree, like that my academic credentials determine my economic, socioeconomic status. No. In a managerial paradigm, they do, maybe. But in an entrepreneurial paradigm, all bets are off. You know, I gave a book talk in Dallas at the Pegasus Center in December. And a doctor came up to me. I was talking about, interviewing hundreds of these everyday entrepreneurs. And they're not extraordinary people. They're very ordinary people. And this doctor came up to me after my talk and he said, there's a guy here in Dallas who's a billionaire, and I'm pretty sure that he's functionally illiterate. And I said to him, like, that doesn't really surprise me. I just met a barista in the airport who's got a master's degree. Right? It's a useful paradox. The master's degree is not a guarantee of success anymore. But the bigger idea nested in this all, Elon, is that entrepreneurship is more than just a business discipline. It's a formula for human flourishing. And that kind of goes back to the beginning of this conversation today, when we're able to pursue our interests and develop our abilities autonomously, without someone telling us how to do it, when to do it, why to do it. And we do that in ways that create value for other humans, we tend to flourish. We become intrinsically motivated and therefore optimally engaged. We switch from a thank God it's Friday mentality to a thank God it's Monday mentality. And it goes back to your earlier question. Like, your very first question is, I want people to experience that once in their lifetime. Like, where learning and work are fun, exciting, energizing, something I look forward to, something I feel fulfilled by. That's how it's supposed to be. That's how nature has built us, to reward us for that.
So how would you recommend people can make working fun for themselves and learning as well?
So I said this in my book, Elon, which is, don't quit your day job, don't drop out of school, don't take big financial risks. Reappropriate some percentage of your discretionary time, thought, effort into micro-experimenting, trying new ways to figure out how to make yourself more useful to more people. I say this to, college kids. You guys are all into video games. Great. Here, I got a game for you. Find your friend. I'm telling you, Elon, go find a friend. Each of you guys put $20 on the table, or $5, I don't care. $50. Take $100. Use what's in your kitchen, in your garage, in your cupboard, in your attic, and try to turn that 50 into 500. That's level one. If you lose the 50, no big deal. Brush yourself off, learn the lessons, and try it again. But when you get to 500, then try to get to 5,000. That's level two. And ultimately get to 50,000. And by the way, I've met 13-year-olds that did this with a lawnmower. 13-year-olds. Right? Excuse me, 15-year-old. Started when he was 13. Had $50,000 saved up mowing lawns. And by the time you get to level 3, you're done. You're good. Your mindset's forever altered. But the bigger point that I'm trying to make here, Ilan, is that the entrepreneurial mindset is not the cause of entrepreneurial behavior, it's an effect. Right? The cause of entrepreneurial behavior is like the self-actualizing tendency that's in any living thing. But over time, your mindset adapts. When you're out in the world with a sharp stick and some duct tape and baling wire and no one telling you how to do it, you got to figure it out for yourself. And just like a blind person loses their eyesight, the other senses compensate. When the boss and the teacher go away and you've got to figure it out for yourself, your senses adapt to that. And pretty soon you start to realize there's opportunity everywhere. Opportunities that you couldn't see a year ago that were staring you right in the face.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with that, and I think I like the idea of the cause and the effect of it. So just to reiterate what you're saying, I want to make sure I got this right. You're saying the cause of all of this would be just you self-actualizing, you saying, okay, I want to do this just to improve myself, etc. And then the effect of all of that, of you going through all these experiences, you trying out different things, is the mindset that comes with it.
Correct, correct. But people look at it wrong. They think, oh, some people are just born naturally with an entrepreneurial mindset. That's wrong-headed. That's wrong-headed. School, I said this in a lecture somewhere I gave a couple weeks ago. If I wanted to design a mechanism that would systematically suppress the entrepreneurial impulse in humans, I can think of no better system than public education.
Repeat that one more time.
If I were to design a system, if I wanted to set out to design a system that would systematically suppress the entrepreneurial spirit in humans, I can think of no better mechanism than standardized education.
I agree.
And the problem is that standardized education is steeped in managerial thinking. There are underlying assumptions that, the minute you set foot in school, it's assumed you're going to work for an employer who's going to tell you what's useful, and you're going to do it. So you don't need the useful thing discovery skills. In fact, they get in the way in managerial paradigms. They're annoying. You want to suppress them. We don't want you thinking about better ways of doing things. We want you to just be hyper productive at one thing.
And to add on to that, to be hyper productive for somebody else.
Well, that too. But again, we have to remember that at the dawn of the Industrial Revolution, the barriers to entry were enormous. Right? You needed millions of dollars. Most of us were illiterate peasant farmers. You needed a lot of money to open a factory. So it's just most people it was very hard to be entrepreneurial. You want to be a blacksmith or a cobbler? Fine. You got to study under somebody for 20 years to become a master. And you want to try to sell your shit in the next town, there's people in the woods waiting to tax you, and there's bandits, We don't have infrastructure and transportation, all that figured out. So at the time, your options were okay, keep my little blacksmith store open, and I'm going to make $1.50 a day, or go stand in the factory and cut the piece of wire over and over and over all day, but you're going to make $2.50 an hour. You got kids, you got a wife to feed, but those barriers are gone, Ilan. They're gone. You got a cell phone, you got access to 2 billion people at least. You got access to a lot of knowledge. The barriers are still in your mind. We're still training people to think like employees, right? Employment is dead, right? These top-down managerial systems are ill-structured to function in dynamism and complexity and change. I was talking to some educators at at a university in Georgia, and they're all worried about kids cheating with AI. And I'm asking them, why do you think kids are cheating? Why are they cheating? It's because they don't care about the knowledge. They just care about the piece of paper. That's why they're cheating. They are extrinsically motivated. So you've created a system that works against the intrinsic desire to learn. I don't cheat when I learn. I want to learn for learning's sake. I read academic papers. I listen to audiobooks. I watch YouTube videos. Like, I read things that are difficult because I want the knowledge. So that's the fundamental difference. And so learning systems that require extrinsic motivations were built to produce people who would work in factories or businesses that relied on extrinsic motivation, which are systems that they just, how do I want to put this? Extrinsic motivation undermines intrinsic motivation. So if you're in a learning system or a work system that relies on extrinsic motivation, it's very, very unlikely that you're going to flourish in that environment. It's no wonder that the vast preponderance of human beings on this planet are not engaged in their work. And I think most people get to be 35 or 40 years old, and they slowly and insidiously acquire an assumption that the world is the way it is and I am who I am and there's nothing I can do to change it. So we just redirect all our discretionary time and effort to coping strategies rather than escape strategies or growth strategies.
Yeah, I totally agree. I was going to say the same thing as well. How a lot of people seem like they're stuck in that mindset and they would rather spend more time just accepting it as opposed to trying to get out of it. So
There's a
Gary,
biological reason for that too, by the way. There's an evolutionary reason for that. It's like your brain's always trying to reduce the cognitive load, save energy. Your brain is an energy conserving mechanism. So you're in a shitty situation, a job you don't love, a job that's not fulfilling. But if your memory tells you this is inescapable, your brain suppresses the escape, fight or flight response and redirects your energy towards coping strategies. Figure out how to cope with it. Don't bother trying to expend energy trying to escape it. Sorry for that long-winded answer.
no, you're good. I was just going to say, so do you recommend people just kind of like tough it out then and really make sure they get their thoughts straight? Like in that moment when people, because I know I've had this as well, where it's like, oh, it's so hard to think about this hard thing as opposed to just putting it off and doing something easier. And I end up doing the easier thing because by definition it's easier. So what would you recommend for me? Like, am I supposed to just kind of tough it out and be like, no, I need to do this as my priority, or what?
Well, I think it goes back to our earlier conversation, Alon, about like having a compelling goal. Like, again, what we're talking about doesn't make any sense if you don't have a compelling goal. It's like asking yourself, why not? Like, maybe we can end it here, Elon. It's like a mindset is a belief system that is perfectly designed to create the outcomes it's creating. And if you can get somebody to understand that, like, I am the source of my misery. It's my underlying beliefs, of which I'm not necessarily aware, are creating the outcomes in my life. How am I contributing to outcomes that I say that I don't want? The minute we start asking ourselves those kinds of questions is the beginning of a pathway towards freedom, liberty.
I love that. And I totally agree with you. Gary, man, thank you again. Another hour went by so quick. Where can people find you at?
So you can find me. I have a website, Gary. You can email me at gary@garyschoeniger.com. A lot of my work is at the company I founded 18 years ago called the Entrepreneurial Learning Initiative. That's ELImindset.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Facebook. And my author website is garyschoeniger.com. I'm assuming you put the correct spelling in that. I hope this conversation has convinced you to buy my new book, The Entrepreneurial Mindset Advantage. The subtitle is The Hidden Logic That Unleashes Human Potential. Thanks for having me, Alon.